Okay, so friends, delighted to welcome you to the session tonight. So Agatha, let me just tell you how I met Agatha. So most of my public speaking journey has been here because I didn't start public speaking until the pandemic. And so I honed my skills here where I can hide behind a video camera. Agatha was one of the first sessions that I had done live, like ever. And so there I am, standing in front of this group, doing the thing that I do, which is tell you why you need to get out of your own way and go become a thought leader because it opens up everything, right? Like all the opportunities, all the excitement, all the joy. You've got this network, you've got freedom to go. And I really want you to become a thought leader. And so here I am. Thought leadership is great. You should do it. It's so possible. And Agatha is like, actually, so I'm a recruiter. I'm just really looking to see if you have a pulse. And I sat there and I thought, sorry, this is totally counter to what I think, Agatha. So, but she just blew me away by how she kind of crystallized this thing of like what recruiters really look for. We have to know this. And so I'm delighted to welcome her to the DIY influence community, where the whole point of this community is to remove those barriers that keep you from being visible, from growing an audience, so you can move through whatever the pivot is now to what's next. So Agatha, welcome. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Would you say hello, tell us about you?
Yeah, thank you, Julie. And thank you for not thinking, what a witch, when I offered that commentary at that chief meeting, and for inviting me to be part of this community. So a little bit about my background. I am the president and co-founder of an executive recruiting agency called One House Executive. I also sit as the president of a hospitality-focused recruitment agency. I've been doing this for about a decade. Prior to that, I was in finance and private equity. And I feel like there's so much behind this sort of, curtain that people don't share. And so that is my goal tonight, is to share with you the things that recruiters aren't going to tell you. One, either because it makes them feel like they're lazy, or because it is, just taking a peek behind their day-to-day process. The goal for tonight is really to give you, I think, a complementary perspective to LinkedIn, to being a thought leader, which is extremely important, but also using it and leveraging it to get noticed by recruiters. So that's what today is really going to be focused on. I know Julie and Melissa Cohen do a great boot camp on thought leadership and personal brand. And so I urge everyone to take that. I know I've met a few of you through there, but this is by no means a replacement of that. It's just additive. So feel free to stop me if you have any questions. But if you guys are all ready, I think let's go ahead and get into it.
Heck yeah. So let's say, if I can, I'll just jump in and add this one little piece here. So we are recording this. We will absolutely make sure to send it out to you. You do not have to be on camera. Just please be aware. Like, we would rather have you here and doing everything that you're doing right now. We will keep an eye on the chat for any questions. So as they come in, if there is a nice break and it won't throw our speaker off too much, we'll be glad to raise your question when we catch a break. But otherwise, please do add it to the chat and add your LinkedIn to the chat as well. So Agatha, back to you.
Thank you, Julie. I appreciate that. And I have a cheat sheet. So if you miss anything, there is this recording, but there's also a cheat sheet with a lot of links for you to follow. And we'll drop that into the chat. I think I'm going to rely on Yami to do that because I'm not good at multitasking or Zoom. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Oh, it says that it's disabled.
Of course it is. I fix you right now. Here we go.
Thank you, friend.
You can right ahead.
All right, so I am going to share my screen with everyone. And I'm going to pick on myself here. Let's see, tell me when you can see this LinkedIn profile.
I see. That's my friend Agatha right there.
Well, I have you too. We can pick on you as well. But I figured I would have to be the sacrificial lamb and start with myself. So just to give you guys a bit of context, there's almost 1 billion people worldwide on LinkedIn. I think the number is 875 million at last count. That's a whole heck of a lot of people, right? And so how do you get noticed? Of that nearly 1 billion people, there's 140 million people that are open to work. And so you're competing, if you're looking for work, with 140 million people that are trying to get their resume in front of recruiters, that are just trying to get noticed. And so the secret that I think recruiters don't tell you is that we don't spend a lot of time on LinkedIn profiles. We are trying to go through volume, right? To see who is going to best fit our requisites and who we want to put up in front of our clients. And we're not giving, volume to them. Typically, we submit about 5, maximum 10 candidates for any given search. And in executive recruitment, sometimes that is 3 candidates to 5 candidates. So it's really important that you get noticed. One of the things that I'll mention before we kind of go section by section is that for most of you on here, I think that you fall into that executive sphere. There aren't ads that we post. In executive recruitment, it's about 0% that you're ever going to come across a job ad. So the only way that you're going to get to me is me finding you on LinkedIn. About 95% of executive recruiters use LinkedIn Recruiter. And so we are searching for keywords. We are searching and looking for a track record. So it's really important that your profile speaks to that. So let's get into what's the first thing that we see. We are looking at your headshot. We want to know, like I said to Julie, I want to know you have a pulse. I also want to know that you're a real person. Believe it or not, even at the executive level, we've got a lot of ghost candidates. In that, I mean, people, and there's some crazy people out there that will construct a totally fictitious resume just to get noticed. They get their kicks out of being called for something that they're totally not qualified for. So one of the ways that we vet at a very fast pace who you are is by going onto your LinkedIn profile and making sure that you're an actual human that exists, and we want to see your face. Mine is, as you can see, it has a neutral background. It is the majority of, my face and upper body. Typically, you want it to be 60%, so head to shoulders. I liked this little book jacket look, so mine is a little bit more. You don't have to have professional photos. If your company or previous companies have done that, great, keep them, put them up here, use it. You want to make sure that it looks like you. You also want to make sure that it's speaking to the image that you want to portray, right? So as you can see, I'm in a suit. If I wanted to be approachable for a casual operation, this might not be the look that's conveying that. So you just want to make sure that your profile picture is aligned to the image and the role that you want. I know Julie has used AI, and so and some others on here have used AI. I have not gone down that rabbit hole, but I've heard great things. So I think if you want, there's a link in the cheat sheet that we will drop in the chat and that we will send to you that has, options for doing that. The second thing is that we notice is the banner. My banner obviously is my company. I want you to think about that when you think of me. I go back and forth on this. I think this is an opportunity for you to show your personality. And I definitely want you to show your personality because you are more than just your resume. However, lots of quotes, not always our favorite thing. And the reason for that as a recruiter is because we are sending your LinkedIn profile to our clients. And if the quote is something that's so existential and it doesn't land, sometimes people are turned off by that. So I always say if it's a quote, just, ask your peer group, hey, what do you think of this quote? What I would prefer to see is something that on a psychological level will tie me into, yes, you are the right person for this. And so for an example, if you're a CFO, I would love to see a background that is money related, finance, charts, something that just seeps inside my brain that says, yes, this person understands, the P&L, they are associated with this functional area. So just keep that in mind. One time I did have a candidate, really, really intelligent person, very cerebral. He had hieroglyphic drawings and he thought that that was going to be a conversation starter. And I said, you are in food and beverage. I have no idea. I would think that you're an anthropologist. This is so confusing. Get this off now. It is not a conversation starter. I am not going to say, I really want to know what Robert's thinking with that. Let me interview him so I can get the story. So let's make sure that that ties in. The next most important thing is your headline. So this is really where people qualify you. And I love having something that speaks not only to where you've been and what you do, but who you are. However, I say put that towards the end. So if you look at mine, I want to be known as an executive recruiter. I want my candidates to say, yes, this is who she is. This is what she does, right? Then I have a line, talent acquisition advisor to hypergrowth businesses. That is so my clients who are in that bucket and potential clients can find me and know exactly what my niche is. And then superpower seeker is a little bit of personality reserved for the end. So you only get 120 characters. I say use them wisely. LinkedIn will default to your current position and company. That is fine, but utilize this as best you can, but at the very least have the position that you want in there. So if you're a CFO, put CFO as the first thing. It's the position you want first, or the position that you hold should be the first thing that you have there. And then you can kind of play around. What doesn't work for me is superfluous, adjectives. I had someone say operations guru. I'm like, what is that? I don't, anyone in operations can be an operations guru. That tells me nothing. Let's expand upon that. And, Julie's great at saying, let's not put aspirational things in here, right? So help me understand who you are. So those are the first 3 things that we check. And then I'll be really honest with you, we skim all the way down to your experience. Now, if you've applied to something, we will cross-reference your resume with this section. This is where we weed candidates out when they don't match. So I always say, make sure that your resume and your LinkedIn matches exactly. What I mean is it doesn't necessarily mean the content, it means your title and your dates. Sometimes what we find is that in this public forum, which is LinkedIn, all of a sudden your title has gone up 2 pegs, but what's on your resume is maybe something different. Also, sometimes people say, well, I have such an interesting company and they have different titles that it doesn't translate to the market, so people don't understand. Put the title that you have, and then you can speak to that, in the experience section. But by having them not be congruent, it makes us pause and think that there's something that you're hiding or that you're trying to present something that's false. So make sure that your titles and your dates match. Fill in any gaps. So oftentimes we'll have candidates that have left the industry for a brief period of time, maybe to focus on children or an ailing parent, or to go back to school to make a pivot. You want to fill in the gaps. I always say to do this on your resume as well, because if you don't, people will create their own narrative. We are going through volume of candidates. And so when there isn't information that's there, someone is going to say, based on some experience that they've had, that this must be your story. So don't let them tell your story. You got to tell your own story. And then we look at what you've done. And this is where some recruiters differ. Some people will say, write this section exactly as your resume. I think this should be a compliment to your resume, right? Your resume is all of the data points, all of the quant. Here, I want to see a little bit about the company that you work for. Sometimes they're independent companies, and so you can't click in and find out information about that company. So if you tell me right here what it is, then I can quickly understand, okay, this is similar to what my client is, so let me investigate further. I don't necessarily think you have to have all of these bullet points. If I expand, you can see that there's a lot more information here. It's color and it's helpful. I definitely think if you're going to put information, it needs to have quantifiable and metric-based data. But really what's getting us to you is the titles, the companies, and then your skills. So if anything, I would say absolutely make sure that you're selecting skills for each position that you have. And you want to make sure that these skills are relevant not only to the position, but to the keywords that recruiters are looking for the roles that you want, right? So really focus on kind of current position and the last couple of positions of the last 3 to 5 years. I'm going to briefly pause because I feel like I'm going pretty quickly. Does anybody have any questions before I move on?
Of course, my buddy Jen wants to know where the pink Ferrari is.
The
But
pink Ferrari. Yes. So great question. And we'll get to that because it's in the featured section.
Hi, Agatha. I have a question.
Yes.
Sorry, Carol Kim. Good to
Carol.
have you here. Thanks, Julie, for organizing this. You had said at the top of the session that 95% of executive recruiters use LinkedIn as a search engine. I'm curious to hear how does LinkedIn's platform or algorithm or what's the magic in which like my profile or someone else's profile pops up when a recruiter is looking for candidates, right? Is it that executive recruiters are looking at keywords, and so if my profile happened to have hits on like a couple of those keywords, it comes up? Like, how is that done?
Excellent question. Thank you for asking that. So there are a couple of different ways that recruiters will utilize LinkedIn. You can search specific keywords. And really what people do are they either are candidate focused or company focused. Typically in executive search, before we even go to market, we have identified a target candidate list because these positions are highly confidential. And so we try to limit exposure risk by just going out to market, presenting to our clients, and our clients saying, this is way off. So we will build out target candidate lists that are usually pre-approved by our clients, and then we will go directly to them. So how do we do that? Our clients are either saying, these are our competitive landscape. These are companies that we want to pull candidates from. So we can search by company and then filter, some keywords for skill set, or it can be candidate based. And what oftentimes we'll do is we'll ask our clients, what's the perfect candidate for you? What does that look like? And then we'll go to market and we'll give them examples of candidates. Oftentimes, these are candidates that aren't necessarily in market or looking to make a change. If they say that, yes, that is the type of person that we want, there's a search function within LinkedIn where you can take profiles of candidates, drop it into that, and then it will cull LinkedIn, geography agnostic, to find candidates that are similar. And then you can whittle down from that. What I say is, keywords, titles, companies, these are all the primary, and location are all the primary things that recruiters are looking for. So it's really important that you have, your location. Oftentimes, if I'm looking for a candidate in the US, it's agnostic. It's anywhere in the US, but I am not necessarily able to look beyond the borders of the US and, bring candidates in from the UK or other countries because there's limitations with visa sponsorship. So you want to make sure that you've got your location here. The other thing is really, it is pulling from the keywords that are throughout your profile. So that's why you want to make sure in your headline, you've got your current position or your most recent position, the one that you want. What we tend not to do though, is if there is, say, for example, you've been a VP of finance and you want a CFO role. You might have CFO in your headline, but if we scroll down and it's not in your experience, then you get weeded out. So it is really, really critical to have those keywords and those key competencies. That is how we are finding you. It is company, title, and then the skill set. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome. And so that's why I think, as we go through this, recruiters aren't spending a lot of time on your profile. The average time that a recruiter is on your profile is about 10 seconds. With resumes, it's even quicker. So you don't have that much time to make an impact. If a recruiter finds you interesting, then they're going to dig a little bit deeper. And where they dig a little bit deeper, the first place is in the About section. So that is probably the fourth most important thing about your profile is About. And you want to make this something that's approachable. You want to have information about who you are, and you want to have a lot of white space. I think LinkedIn gives you about 2,000 characters please don't utilize all of that space. I would say do about half of that. One of the secrets that I don't think recruiters are going to tell you is oftentimes we will use what's in this about space in our presentations to our clients. So for One House Executive, we have a dossier that we give to our clients that has information from our interviews. And some of it is culled from this section. And the secret that recruiters don't tell you is if you put that information in here and you make their lives easier, you make it so that they can copy and paste into their presentations, you will probably be one of the first candidates submitted. And when we're only submitting 5 to 10 candidates, you know, that is, it puts you in a pole position. So what I like to see here, mine is not a good example of this because I'm not actively looking, but it is quantifiable data. Number one, how many years in the industry? Number two, what is the size of companies that you've worked for? What is the biggest team size that you've managed? What is the largest revenues that any company that you've worked for has generated? And then what have you done? What is your superpower? What is your secret sauce? And then a little bit about your leadership philosophy, how you manage people, how you view culture. And it's so important, especially in today's environment, is just really how you treat people. That is an afterthought, or has been an afterthought in a lot of industries. And so I would say 100% of my clients want to know, you know, your ideas of not only thought leadership, but building teams, developing employees, and building culture and maintaining a positive environment. So if you can put that in your about section, you are golden for getting a recruiter to use your information in their presentations and present you first.
That is awesome. Thank you so much for that question, Carol. Thank you, Tiffany. So I've got a hand up with Tiffany, and then also I have Pamela, who had left a comment in the chat that's got a great question. If she can't legally expose metrics on social, like a lot of us with between NDAs and all the things, how can we maybe handle that? And then I'd love to go to Tiffany's question.
So I get that a lot, and I understand that you can't expose metrics maybe underneath the company, but that's where the about section, you can provide a range. And typically we find that that does not, you know, it doesn't impede on any of the NDAs that you've signed. It's really important. And the more you can convey around metrics and numbers, the better. If you're absolutely terrified of putting anything in there because someone may be able to link it to, you know, feel that it's obvious to whatever company that you've worked with, provide something that's very general, but still steers them in, okay, it's not a small, you know, I'm not dealing with small and middle market, I'm dealing with Fortune 500 companies, something that's going to give some context. That's a way to get around it. And that's also what people are looking for, you know, in terms of keywords. If we're looking for a Fortune 100 company, 500 company, emerging, they just want to have some idea that it's in the market landscape of their client.
Amazing. Tiffany, what, if you don't mind, Agatha, we'll go to Tiffany's question, and then we'll have one last one that's so good in the chat that we want to make sure people don't miss it. But Tiffany, over to you.
Great. Thank you. Agatha, quick question. The skills section. So I believe LinkedIn changed the product layout a little bit. Previously, I think the skills section was its own distinct thing, and now you can add skills per role. Is there any difference or benefit from your perspective in having everything combined into a single, you know, skills section versus adding skills to every single role? I think you're still limited to 50 skills, but I'm wondering if there's any benefit now to going back out of sort of the general bucket and adding them role by role instead.
Great question. Yes. The more information you can put in, the more, you know, possibility you have to being discovered. Okay. So I think it is really important to put it under each role, because to be quite honest, we are not going down to the skills section and really paying attention here.
Okay. So it's better to, and probably like more recent roles, or the roles that align with what you're looking for in the future, like concentrate it where you want to be searchable.
Correct.
Okay,
We'll get to, you know, the endorsements. They're nice, but I'll be really honest with you. Recruiters don't really care.
Yeah.
We don't really care because we don't, you know, anyone can endorse you. And so the recommendations are far more important than the endorsements.
great. Thank you.
Mhm.
Love that. Okay, and then this question of age. So how many years of experience should we include? Or I think this other one, does number of years in the industry potentially age us out of contention? How do we manage ageism?
Yeah, so ageism, it's interesting. I don't run across that. I think a lot of, you know, HR managers and leaders are they're woke and they're not trying to say, oh, I want someone who's young. Actually, age and the more mature you are works in your benefit. Because there's this idea that, you know, life experience, maturity. So when you have 20 years, I always say in terms of a resume, you don't need to go beyond 20 years. If you have 20 or 30 years experience, some people are really scared to say that, you know, 30 plus years of experience. Don't be. It is not going to make someone say, oh no, this is they're in their twilight, they're going to leave. If anything, especially an executive, a lot of my clients prefer that. They want to know that you've had this track record, that you've had a long time and have maybe had multiple iterations of a similar role across various companies. So I don't think you should be scared of it. It's not something that, you know, is a negative. I mean, I'll be really honest. Some people actually, and this is behind the curtain, some past clients have said to me, I really prefer, especially, you know, most of us are women on here. I think maybe all of us might be women. Actually really prefer a woman who I know is dependable. If she's going to be the leader, she's not a child, you know, she's not having any more children. I would prefer someone in that bucket. Obviously, I'm not working with them anymore because of that. But, you know, again, I think this idea of if we're older, somehow that makes us less desirable is untrue.
I think it's probably a personal experience thing. I have a feeling that's one of those that I think there's enough experience here on the call to point out to some stuff that's happened, but I think that as far as how we present ourselves and what your experience is, Agatha, about how to manage that. Is there any for sure don't do? You mentioned around this piece of like it's not too many years. Like if we hit a number close to like 20, is that not too many? Just want to make sure I heard you right.
Yeah, 20. I mean, 20 years is, you know, is so common. And that is really at the executive level. People have more comfort when you've been in the workforce for 20 years, right? They want people who have that experience, who aren't necessarily new to this. A lot of my clients have a board of directors. And the board, everything that everyone always says to me is, we want to punch above our weight class, meaning we want someone more senior to come and take this position. Number two is we need a track record. We need someone who has a proven track record. So it's very infrequent that you find people will give growth positions if the model is not as follows. You work for company A. Company A is in my comp set, but it is higher revenue, higher volume of employees. So it is a little bit above my weight class. If I'm punching and reaching up, then I'm willing to give someone who maybe at a vice president level, a C-suite role at my smaller emerging brand. It is very, very rare that I ever see any placements occur where someone is saying, you know what, I really like this person. I'm going to give them a growth opportunity. I'm a bigger brand than they're coming from, and I'm going to, you know, promote them up. The honest truth is we just don't see that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind, maybe one more from Denise, such a good question. She's on a gap now and probably not going back to old industry. So while you're in a gap, in limbo, figuring things out, what do you say? What do you do? I know we've mentioned like we don't want to just spin up a consultancy that's not real, but what do we do? We'd love your thoughts.
I think you'd be honest. You know, I have folks that are in transition. They stepped away because of parental obligations. And so they put that up there. They're going to school. It's just, I think we have this idea of, unless we're perfect, unless we check all these boxes, they're not going to pick us, right? You want them to land on your page. So you are a little bit limited if you are pivoting and starting something completely new. Obviously, if you don't have those keywords, it's really hard to be discovered, right? So if you are making a pivot, whatever you're doing to make that pivot, whether you're getting certified in that new industry or you're going back to school, I think put that on your LinkedIn profile. If you don't know and you're just figuring it out, I think, you know, you can in some way articulate that. But sometimes it is just about filling in the space of, you know, this is what I would hope to do, and have that articulated so people can find you there.
Awesome. Well, that was so helpful. Okay, so what we'll do, we'll continue going through. Erin, we'll hang on for your question for just a second, and I get if you want to take us through any more, or is that we at the end and we could just do open Q&A?
No, we've got a few more things to go. Okay,
Beautiful.
so
Let's do it.
Experience is really important. That's where people are looking. Then they go to your about. So we've covered that. You know, again, I just want to reiterate, if you make this full of information, it really does help put you on the top of the pile. So as you're writing your about section, think about, you know, the lens of a recruiter. If they're rating a presentation on you to say to deliver you to their client with your resume saying, this is why this person is a perfect fit for this, why you should consider them, why out of 50 other candidates at this level, I selected this person. Just think about what information you would want them to convey and what you think you would want to see if you were in that position. And to me, it is data points. It is years in the industry. It is, you know, all of the quantifiable data, but also a little bit more about your personality, which is something that you don't get from a resume. What is your leadership style? What is your opinion on development and coaching and culture? And then your superpowers, which don't always mean your skill set, just means what you're innately good at, right? Are you a people person? Are you an empath? How do you use that to help shape your organization? So those are really the key sections. And then once we get a good idea of alignment to our open position, we will typically email you to schedule a call in preparation. You know, we're looking at some of these things. It's always nice to see where you went to school. That's typically on your resume. Your licenses and certifications are always great. The skills section, again, I think it's important. The endorsements are really nice, especially if you have, you know, 50 or 60 endorsements. What I have found though, with the skills is when I add skills into each of these individual experiences, sometimes they don't align with skills that people have endorsed. So when you first got on LinkedIn, before they changed things, there was, you know, people could just like and endorse you, and maybe they endorse you for something that you didn't actually pick in your skills. So sometimes they don't align. So I think if we look at my skills, there are some that I have, you know, 49 endorsements for something that for HR. I don't have any true HR experience. That's not something that I'm known for. So, you know, again, the weight of this section isn't as great as the other sections. Recommendations. Recommendations are very important, especially if they are from, if you're a consultant, clients, if you are a W-2 employee, you know, previous bosses. So once we get to the resume on Friday, I will tell you, you know, no more do you want to have references on your resume. This is a way for people to understand, it's essentially, you know, reference checks, but accessible and easy to see. So all levels, you want a former boss, you want a peer, and you actually want someone that was your direct report. And sometimes the direct report references or recommendations are more meaningful because people get a sense of, you know, how you develop somebody, how you treated someone that reported into you. And right now with culture being such a key focal point, it's really, really important to see how people responded to you and how many of those that you have, right? So recommendations are great. I've got a link to templates. Don't be shy in sending them out. It's really easy. People typically respond pretty quickly, and it's a no pressure situation. If they can't do it, they can't do it. It's in volume. So if you send out, recommendations in batches of 10, you're likely going to get, at least 20% of that coming to you. So don't be afraid to do it. As you can see, I don't ask for any of them, but it is something that I encourage doing, a refresh every time you change a position, or if you're in a long tenured role, every 3 to 6 months, right? Ask for those recommendations from your peers and your colleagues. They will help you greatly. And then, as recruiters, we might look and say, oh, well, they've changed industries. Oh, I know Ashley. Let me go reach out to Ashley and see what she has to say. And maybe there's another connection with Ashley or Matt that we will delve down and look and get a backdoor reference. That's something else that recruiters don't tell you. Oftentimes, if for every reference that you give us, we're looking at our network to see if we can get a backdoor reference. References, and this is why I say keep them off of your resume. Everybody knows that whoever you list is going to give you a positive reference, right? Our clients don't necessarily want us to use those references. They want us to go into our network and find people who have worked with you, who can give us kind of the honest, no holds barred truth. So this helps you with that, because sometimes this is enough to give them a level of comfort. And then we go up to the featured section. So the featured section, I know a lot of people will, paste sort of awards or accolades, or if they've done a TED Talk, featured, items that really shine a light on their competencies and sort of, their triumphs. This is also, if you're currently looking, the best place to put your resume. Don't be afraid to pin your resume here. If you are actively looking, if you're not gainfully employed, you're in a transition, put your resume here, because again, like I said, a lot of times these positions that I'm recruiting for are not public. They're not on a jobs board, right? So I want to see your resume, and this is going to help me make a quick decision about whether or not, you align with the job that I'm looking for, because sometimes what's in the experience doesn't have all of that juicy detail that is in your resume. So don't be afraid to put this here. Do recruiters delve that far in to your featured section? Honestly, probably not. By the time we've seen, okay, you have a pulse, you're alive, you're a human being, you have the right title, your experience is aligned with the companies that are in the market of my client, and the about section makes sense, we're reaching out to you to schedule a first interview. We're not really staying on your page for that long. Like I said, initially, it's about 10 seconds to call this page to say whether or not I want to get you on the phone and interview you. If there are prep that I want to do outside of information that I would request, I might dig in here a little bit, but really the goal is, okay, I don't have a lot of time. Let me just get a quick snapshot of you to decide if I want to engage you, for a conversation about the role that I'm representing. And now I will open it up to questions.
So we have a couple of really good questions. And also, I think with pulling back a curtain, there's always going to be stuff that we go, wait, what? Wait, what? And I went and taught this morning at a high school to a bunch of high school kids, talking to them about interviewing. And I got some looks too, like, wait, what? They would judge me if I put a photograph on a resume? And I go, yeah, totally. Don't do it. And so I think there's going to be some of this stuff with what a recruiter would look at and what's common in as far as practice, but this question of backdoor references. So this is totally new to me. And I wonder if you can unpack a little bit more,
Yeah,
to Jen's point.
I'll say it's industry specific, because there are some industries where you absolutely cannot do that, right? And so traditional references, And this is the truth that, they won't tell you, right? So their HR department is limited in the references that they can do, right? They can call and verify employment history, title, and dates worked. And whether or not someone's eligible for rehire. That is typical reference checks. But when you open up references by putting reference lists on your resume, then you open it up for people to, to do these deeper references. And every single recruiter will be asked to do reference checks. Backdoor reference checks are something that our clients always want us to do. They want us because we have touched so many people in a specific industry. They know that we have connections. They want to understand, how you were, not necessarily, it's really, it's sometimes we have people that go really deep. I tell all of my candidates, hey, listen, I'm doing backdoor references, right? You worked at these companies, we have relationships. I know you gave me X individual. I have relationships with some other individuals and I'm going to do a backdoor reference. Is there anything that I'm going to be surprised with? Do you have any reservations to me reaching out to my contacts, right? I believe in transparency, but this is something that companies look for. They will, and it's not necessarily an official reference, but they may reach out to someone that they know and ask, hey, how was Julie to work with? She seems really great. But did she ever get, she seems so calm and collected. Was there ever a time where she didn't get along with an employee? Was there ever a time where there was conflict, and how did she manage it? Or there might be something that comes up in their interviews where they just want clarity around that one item, and a reference that is a backdoor reference can give so much weight to that decision. So I wouldn't be afraid of it. If there is something or a person that you really didn't get along with in a company, tell your recruiter. Say, hey, I understand that you might do backdoor references, you might have relationships, just want to be forthcoming. There was this supervisor that I worked with. I wouldn't feel comfortable with you reaching out to them, and this is why, right? Because there's always a pattern. So if there's one person that you didn't get along with, one bad person, that is not going to influence your overall references. But if there's a theme where you're like, well, at this company, I hate this person hated me in this company, and it's consistent, well, then we're going to ask the question, is it you? Yeah. So anybody have any kind of concerns with the references?
Yeah, I think so. So Tiffany has her hand up. So let me go to Tiffany and then Ricky, and I'll scan through here. But one quick question, clarification. Can you confirm it's first level connections for backdoor? Is that what you're referring to?
Well, in terms of, if we go here and we see that someone is a connection, we're looking, it's usually if we know that person, right? We're not going to any groups that we don't know personally. So yes, typically it's a first, level connection to us.
Gotcha. Thank you. Okay, Tiffany, over to you.
Yeah, I have a quick question. Chief, you have listed as experience. I've done the same in my profile, and I go back and forth because it's not a role, it's a membership. I've had people trying to sell to me thinking I am the chief revenue officer of Chief. And so I just wonder, how, as a recruiter, as you're sort of filtering for any membership organization that people may belong to, how that influences either the algorithm, what is fed to you, and how you sort of see that as a recruiter. I've seen other people put it down and like down at the bottom and like special associations or something section. I personally like having it in experience because I think other chief members can find me and see me easily when I connect. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is I put a comment in the chat about a helpful way I kind of came up with this week to use some of the great recommendations that we get in LinkedIn that we feel like just sort of sit down there and we hope that somebody reads them, and then plug that back into some of the sections within LinkedIn that actually feed the algorithm. So feel free to refer to my comment in the meeting chat. And if anybody wants more info on that, I'd be happy to like chat offline and share that with the group, because that I think was a really helpful find for me this week.
Yeah,
I would love that.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And I will definitely look at that. So we talked about this, where should chief and other membership organizations live? I do think depending on what the organization is, it's helpful to have it in the experience section. One, to your point, because you can connect with others. For the most part, I think recruiters are pretty savvy on, what is, they know how to read this experience section, right? They understand, like, I'm looking at it, it's a member. You are not sitting in your active position working for the company. But if you tend to find that it's confusing or you're a member of a group that isn't widely known, then I think you can move that down to, there's a place up top where you can add kind of affiliations. I think, Julie, you know where this is better than I do.
Yeah, you can add a section, and like up at the very top, there's a place to add a section, and then like add a profile section.
Yes. So you can move that down, but I don't think it necessarily hinders anything, because what we're looking at is, we're trying to make sense of the experience. And so when we see something like that, it's pretty clear to us that that is not a position that you're actively sitting in.
Yeah. So we have a couple of really great questions. I think, like, with our time here, most of our community is in a transition, and they are actively trying to figure out, what do I do to get through this pivot? How the heck do I, and we're going to have a second session with Agatha this week on Friday to talk about like your resume and storing, what's the narrative behind it. But I think, do we put, like, so for example, like Erin mentioned, she's going to resign from her company, will be looking for a new job. Does she put that out there? I think, like, putting it out there is something that we're seeing more people do. What does that do for recruiter piece? And then a second piece of that, do we put our old role as now in the past? So any more you can talk about, that would be amazing.
Yes. So I just want to clarify, putting it out there in terms of open to work.
More just if you take in your experience section and you put an end date to your current role.
Yeah, I would say that does help. We want to keep things up to date and accurate. So one of the things that is a pet peeve of recruiters is when you don't adjust, because you don't want to show that there's been some terminal date and you're in transition. One, we'll look at it and maybe we don't rank you as an active or viable candidate. So a lot of times people will just leave their last position present, even though they're not there. I always say, as you would with your resume, update your LinkedIn profile. So if you've left the company, put the date that you left. If it's a future thing, I guess you could put your terminal date in there. I mean, it's very helpful. One of the things that you can do, though, to signal to recruiters that's really helpful is in this open, right? I say at an executive level, do not put the open to work banner. It's a kiss of death. And I know some people disagree with that. On the whole, what we see is it's great for entry level. It's not so great for executives, because the thought is, if you're a potent executive, you have a network, recruiters are knocking down your door, you should be a very viable candidate that can get placed quickly. Now, we know that that's not necessarily the case with industries facing layoffs, with contraction in business. Q3 was pretty bad on the whole for so many industries. So the way to get around that psychology is to place that you're open, but open to recruiters only. So the way that you do that is, you select the open to, you'll fill out titles that you're interested in. You'll notice that because because of chief, it says that I'm a member. So that's what it auto generates. Just a interesting FYI. So you'll update that, and you want to select the recruiters only. You do not want to select all LinkedIn members, because that will give you that open to work. And if you have that open to work on for an extended period of time, it's almost like a house that's been sitting on the market for a really long time. It's diminishing value, right? So I suggest highlighting this recruiters only.
Absolutely. Great point. Okay. So going back to Erin's point, if she is going to make this move, I'm seeing some really cool posts nowadays that are mostly from men, well, going, hey, I'm so excited to say that like I'm going to do something new now and it's going to be awesome and I can't wait to figure it out and share it with you. And yay. And can we, should we, could we, is that the right move from your perspective?
From my perspective, it signals that you're open, right? So I want to know if you are an industry that I'm searching in and I see that, oftentimes what we see is two things. One is that they put a thank you for my time here post, and, they say goodbye and they thank their company. If you follow that up by adding a current experience that says that, I think that that's great, because then I know that you're open. And if you say, hey, I'm exploring, and it's not something that's very specific, then I can throw a lot of different things at you. And, it makes it so that you could be open to relocating. It's always the questions. So I say the more clarity that you can give, the better. And if you don't have clarity about what you want to do, state that, because maybe I don't have a job for you, but other recruiters are searching, right? And like I said, it's not always industry specific. Sometimes it is just about the title. It depends on our clients. And if our clients are saying, hey, I'm this startup, I really need a great CEO, we're in fintech, but I'll take people in SaaS, that's how we're recruiting. We start a larger funnel and then we narrow it down based on our clients' specific needs. So it's dependent on, the client and what they want.
Super helpful. Carol, would love your question.
Yes, another question that I have is, I've had a lot of conversations and introductions with different recruiters. And the part that I always wonder is, how do I maintain the open line of communications, right? Because when you have a conversation with them, it doesn't necessarily mean it's because they have an actual search going on, right? But people are introducing me to recruiters so I can get on their radar. So just given that you're an executive recruiter, how do you like to have candidates, stay in touch with you without being annoying and stalkerish?
Thank you for that question. I would say I love candidates who are communicative. We all, or I shouldn't say all, but most executive search firms have an applicant tracking system, and a CRM, and those are usually folded into one another. So, in the initial conversation, it sounds like people are referring other recruiters to you that may not have opportunities, but it's a discovery call to get to know you, to understand what it is that you're looking for. So they have all those notes in their database. And after that initial discovery call, I'll be honest, recruiters are, they're focused on the requisites that they have in front of them, the positions that they need to fill, because oftentimes these are, quite involved, and it takes about 120 days on average from start to finish into a placement. In this market, it's a lot longer. I've seen searches go 6, and I had one just wrap up that was 9 months long. So it is important that you keep that cadence. If you aren't in an active process with that recruiter, follow up with them. And I would say, you can, a professional and appropriate is probably every 3 to 4 weeks. Beyond that, we don't, especially my firm, we're boutique, so we're not getting all of these requisites in. A lot of executive search firms, the teams probably are working at any given time on maybe 3 to 8 assignments at a time, no more, right? And so if you do the math and you think, well, it takes 3 to 4 months for these to typically close, they're not getting in a lot of new assignments in a short amount of time. So 3 to 4 weeks is probably appropriate. And a recruiter will tell you, hey, I have nothing for you. I will let you know. When you get that message, then you know to pull back and maybe then check in with them, every 3 months. That's what I would say.
So I think if I'm imagining, and y'all correct me, please, in our last 4 minutes here, this stuff is not easy, but I feel like I know more now. I think that the job market is still very difficult. Our hope here in the community is to shorten the journey for you as much as humanly possible. So if there is any other type of thing that you want to learn about, that you are hopeful that we can cover, we can find great expertise just like Agatha's. and bring it in, because this is so complex. I mean, it's complex by industry, it's complex because of the economy and for all these reasons. But what I do know is that I feel like I know a lot more. So if we had any one last question before we wrap tonight, please feel free to just come off mute and share.
Or even if it's just something that you're struggling with, and it doesn't necessarily have to be related to your LinkedIn profile, but something that you feel like you'd want to put out there that maybe I can shed some light on from the recruiter perspective.
I feel a bit like I'm monopolizing because this is my third comment, but I have heard feedback from other women who have been in transition over the last couple of weeks, and I think we were struggling and talking about feeling like we've got 25 years experience and we've done all sorts of things and would be able to do all kinds of things, and not totally sure, like, does it need to be $100 million and hire a company? Do I need to specify the industry? Versus the idea of being, more of a specialist. So this kind of generalist specialist had feedback from somebody that, you're not doing yourself any favors by being a generalist. Like, I can do this, I can do that. It's better to get quite specific to be found and to stick in the brain of other people. So I wanted to see if you had any practical advice or perspective around, how to do that, or sort of what areas to narrow in to stand out with a recruiter.
Yeah, I mean, that's my pink Ferrari, is really getting clarity around who you are and how you sort of place in the market, right? And so I think oftentimes what I see is when an executive comes to market and they have this skill set, and maybe they've touched operations and then transitioned into HR or into finance, and so they're looking at this sort of hybrid of, well, I could do this or I could do this. So I want to find work, and I'm just going to open myself up to both of these things and position my resume or my profile as such that, like, nobody really, I'm a generalist within these functional areas. I think that does do a disservice. It's sort of like, what do you want to do, and pick that lane and move steadfast in that lane, right? Be known as what you want to do, right? So pick the functional area. If you have an agnostic and generalist industry, I think it's, what industries inspire you? There is and always will be positions for people. There's this scarcity mindset. I think it's what I see is, you're not seeing the opportunities that executive recruiters are seeing. They are out there. It's just, we don't know how to find you if you're not specific, right? We need to know exactly, if this person is saying, I am a CEO of small to mid-size, SaaS businesses, that is really, really easy for us to narrow in on. But if it is, I'm a CEO and I've worked in all of these industries and I can do startups and I can do mid, size, it sounds like it's, great, and you're opening up the funnel really wide, but it makes it so confusing. So the more clarity and the more specific you can get, it's easier for me to find you.
Great.
So focus on what it is that you want to do, rather than what it is that you think is going to open up, potential and possibility. Because I'm telling you, and I said this in my pink Ferrari little article that I wrote, all the executives, I had one who said, I had him in a process, and he said, no, I'm very clear. I'm not going to take any positions. I want to be president. This is what I want to do. And I said, well, okay, great. The market is not yielding that. You're looking at, 6 to 18 months. And he proved me wrong, because he was so specific. He had all of these conversations with executive recruiters. Nobody bothered him. And then he took a meeting with one of his top 5 companies, said, this is exactly what I want. And he's in that position, within 4 months. So I think clarity is really key, and trusting that what you want to be doing, those jobs are available. You don't have to settle.
Thank you.
I think Jen may have had her hand up. Jen, are you still here? Do you have a question that you want to share?
I'm not sure. I mean, I know it's 7 and everyone probably wants to go. I was just saying, like, we're talking a lot about the recruiters finding us. What about when we find the recruiter?
What should you do?
by that is what then reference to the question about, you know, sometimes your experience or what you might want to do is wider than the job that you previously had. So maybe your job was very niched, but now you're expanding and you want to consider opportunities that may be a crossover between, you know, between a few different things. So then in that regard, if the recruiter is going to be unable to find you because maybe you're not being specific enough because you're trying to open it up a little bit. And plus the job market could take over a year to get a job. Many friends of mine that are in chief it's been over a year. So is it better for us to find you? Because then at least we get your kind of that buffer that helps to understand who we are as a person and as a professional.
Yeah, I mean, I always say it's, especially when you're in transition and you're actively looking, you don't want to be passive, right? I am searching and I'm usually going after passive candidates, but I've had wonderful people come to me and, you know, maybe it's taken a period of time to get them into a position of, you know, something that's of interest. Yeah, use LinkedIn like we use LinkedIn to find you, to find recruiters. I always say, look at your network. Recruiters are on there. So you can search for executive recruiters in your specific industry, the industry that you're interested in, and just reach out. When you reach out, I think, you know, what you want to do is have a very clear, concise message to them of, listen, I would love, you know, 10 or 15 minutes of your time. This is my background. This is what I'm interested in. If it is a pivot, call out that it's a pivot, and then just explain why you feel like they should take, you know, 15 minutes of their time to have a conversation with you. Most good recruiters, especially at the executive level, they're going to say yes. They're going to want to know you because it's the long view. They might switch industries. They might expand industries. You know, this is relationship building. So if you can find recruiters through either LinkedIn or your own network, I say absolutely, you know, be proactive and reach out.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Such a good question. That last piece right there, the movement forward, not waiting for someone to come to us, the picking up the phone, the sending out the DMs. It's like we become our own business development department, not a walk in the park. But I think we're working on creating a maker space right now where we get to walk through some of that stuff together in the community. So Agatha, thank you so much for your time, for your effort and energy, helping us see kind of past what we know right now. Agatha will be back on Friday at, I believe, 1 p.m. Central or Eastern. It's on your calendar. We will see you then for part 2, which is all about the resume and constructing a resume that is a foundational one that you can reuse, reinvent, so you're controlling your narrative as much as possible. So we'd love to see you then. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being here. And we'll see you very soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye all.
Bye.